Hello and welcome back to my channel and to today's video where I'll be sharing this year's Halloween setup. Over by our front entrance, I removed our standard welcome mat and gave the area a quick sweep. I changed over the mat for this more seasonal one, which I will link down below in the description box, along with everything else that you will see in this video. And then I added in some black lanterns. I have 2 small and 2 large, so I put one of each side on either side of the door. Inside the lanterns, I used our LED pillar candles. These are great because they can be put on a timer or controlled using a remote. So at the end of the evening, when we're going to bed, I don't need to go outside to turn them off. Our autumn wreath that's been up since September stayed in place and will stay there until I do the changeover for Christmas, hopefully at the end of November. Now, I normally like to set up our Halloween decor at the start of October so that we have a whole month to fully enjoy the festivities of spooky season. But we've had a lot going on this month, so I'm a couple of weeks late in setting up, which means that I've kept most areas more simple than I usually would. Now, last year I covered the house in huge spiders, but this year I wanted to go for something a little bit different for our main outdoor display. A friend helped me get my hands on some hay bales from a local farm, and so they don't go to waste, they'll be taking them back when spooky season is over. So technically, these are borrowed bales. Simon helped me move the bales into position, stacking them 2 high on each end and then 1 in the middle. I had 1 bale spare, but I was going to leave that until I knew where I wanted it to go at the end of setup. These bales were going to be the base for my skeleton witch coven. I have 5 full-size skeletons in my Halloween props collection, 2 of the same variety and then 3 of a slightly different variety. These first 2 skeletons that I'm setting up are more flexible than the other 3 that I have, so if I had to recommend one particular style, it would be these, because you can just do more with them. The fun thing about using a group of skeletons as your Halloween display is that you can get creative year after year by using different props and different poses to come up with a whole range of ideas, from movie scenes and characters to even a skeleton version of your family. And you can make them into silly skeletons as well by posing them in certain ways, which makes them less intimidating to smaller children. And if Halloween is a holiday that you really enjoy, like myself, then it could be a really fun activity that the whole family can get involved with every year. Just like decorating a Christmas tree. A couple of my skeletons randomly came with black robes, which was actually ideal for this year's display, given that they were going to be a witch's coven. Now, unfortunately, I did have to have a very brief break from my setup process because it started to rain, but once the clouds cleared, I was back at it. I needed to wipe the rainwater off the heads of my skeletons because I was going to be attaching their witches' hats. I used children's witches' hats because they're slightly smaller than the adults' ones, and the skulls of these skeletons are on the smaller side. To avoid the hats blowing off in any wind, I glued them using some super glue on the front of the skull and the back. Skeletons are much easier to set up on grass because you can use stakes and tent pins to secure them into their desired positions. We have concrete here, which is why I decided to use these hay bales, because I could arrange each skeleton in its position, like sitting down or lying down, and then I could use the hay bales to pin them and secure them in place once I had them where I wanted them. I got 3 witches' brooms, 2 of which I stood up against the hay bales next to a couple of the witches, and then pinned those into place using the tent pins so that they wouldn't blow away. The 3rd broom I stood up and wedged between one of the skeleton's fingers so that it looked like she's holding her broom. I had some crow props from last year, so I decided to add those in various places amongst my witch's coven. I also had an old looking metal Salem apothecary sign, which I pinned to the front of one of the hay bales, again just using some more of those tent pins. We had some plastic wine glasses from an old picnic set and they were never used, so I decided to use them in my display. However, I wanted them to look like they have some kind of liquid inside that the witches would be drinking. So I bought some glass paint in a dark red colour and poured a small amount into each glass. I swirled the paint around the glasses so that it would be up to the desired level that I wanted and then left them to dry. Once dry, it gives the illusion of having wine or even blood inside the glass without having to use actual liquid or an epoxy resin, which of course would add additional weight to the glass. With these glasses being plastic, they're much lighter than real glass and therefore much safer for being used on a display like this, where there is a possibility that they could fall on the floor. I took a large glass jug from our utility room that I use for storing white vinegar and attached a Halloween prop label for Witch's Brew. This jug is real glass and is very heavy, but as I used it on the floor, I'm not concerned about it breaking or blowing away. I didn't want to use any of the red paint in here or even food colouring because I would be keeping and reusing the jug for my white vinegar in the utility room, so I didn't want it to stain. I bought 2 witches' cauldrons so that we can fill these with treats on Halloween night, so that any trick-or-treaters can come and help themselves rather than having to come to the front door, which would disturb the dogs. We have a couple of very reactive dogs, so this for us is the perfect solution. And finally, I wanted to make sure that our witches' coven could be seen in all their glory when it gets dark. So I bought some solar-powered spotlights. This is a set of 4 lights and a solar panel, and each piece comes with a stake that you can push into grass, soil, or in this case, hay bales. I placed the solar charging panel in the middle of the display and then placed each of the spotlights in a position where they would illuminate each of the witches. As it was daylight when I set them up, I did need to come back when it got dark just to adjust the position of the spotlights to make sure they were illuminating all of the witches in the most effective way possible. These lights have 8 different modes and they come with a remote. Once it gets dark, the lights come on automatically, but I can also turn them off using the remote in order to save the power or change the mode without having to go outside. I am really happy with this display. It's actually quite simple but very effective and not too scary for younger children. Inside the house and in the kitchen, I changed over the print in the large frame that we have over the worktop. This is a tip that I've shared in previous videos, but I keep a range of seasonal prints in each frame that we have around the house so that they're kept flat. When the seasons change or when I'm setting up for a certain holiday season, I simply swap over the print, lightly tape it down with some masking tape, and then hang it back in place. I do this with several frames around the house, but this one is the only one that I changed for Halloween this year. Our kitchen still has all of the autumn decor that I set up last month, which you can see in a separate video that I'll link below in the description box. And that would stay until the end of autumn, but I had been saving a spooky candle for Halloween season. It's pumpkin scented, which is my favourite scent for this time of year. In our entrance and on our console table, I decided to swap out these candlesticks for this gothic candelabra. I used some more LED candles, this time black tapered ones, which have a dripping wax design, which make them look more realistic and perfect for Halloween. LED candles are a great alternative if you have children or even pets and you just want a safer option for that candlelight glow, but without the hazard of having an open flame. These ones also flicker so you can get a more realistic lit candle effect. I also added 2 terracotta pumpkins to the floor, which have built-in lights that add a nice soft glow along with the LED candles on the console. Over in our lounge, I added another candelabra to our mantle beam, and then I added a terracotta skull to the LED pillar candles that I put up on the shelf when doing that autumn home refresh last month. I would have liked to have have done a bit more than these little subtle touches inside the house, but this year, given the late timing, I'll be taking everything down in just over a week. So I kept it pretty minimal inside and then just focused more on the outdoor display, which I really love. Thank you for joining me for today's video. Happy spooky season, and I will see you next time.